Hello, everyone. I apologize for being late. Welcome to Picking Up the Pieces. I'm having some issues with my computer, so I'm holding my phone here with Lindsay Marino, who I know everyone is so excited to meet. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about today.
I get asked more than once a week, if not daily, if I can connect people with mediums. And then there's also the skeptics in the world who don't believe. But when you're working with loss, I think it's so comforting to know, just tell us where you're coming from and more.
Okay, great. I will, because I know every loss is different. That's the first thing that I want to say, because I remember when I was going through this process of deep grief, I would get frustrated when people said that they understood, I get what you're going through. And no matter what, nobody gets what you're going through, and they're not meant to get what you're going through, because your relationship with your loved one is so different than other people's relationship with their loved one. So I want to share that first. So everything that I share today, I'm sharing from my experience. And so we can go from there. But I grew up Catholic, so I thought it was a sin to go to a psychic, didn't know what a medium was, and I was a third grade teacher for 7 years. But for me, my grief started when my former boyfriend passed in a motorcycle accident. And it was a nightmare, because my whole life flipped upside down. And, they always say that when you pass, you see your life flash before you. Well, in that moment, when I heard from a state trooper that he passed, my whole life flashed before me. I started to see like the things that we didn't get to do, and I didn't believe that it was happening. And I was supposed to meet him for to babysit for a family friend. So I was waiting for him to get there, and I thought, this is really weird. He's always on time. I just spoke with him, and he didn't pick up, and I didn't want to interrupt his motorcycle ride to get there, because I didn't want him to look down at his phone when he was riding. So I waited, and I kept calling, and finally the state trooper picked up, and he wouldn't tell me anything until I said, I'm not telling you any information that you need from me unless you tell me what's happening. And that's when he said that he said he was killed in an accident, and I didn't believe him. And from there, my body went into a shock from that moment. And that's when I started to receive all of this information soon after from Nick that had passed, my boyfriend that had passed. And I wanted to connect with him because I wanted to make sure that he was okay. But I also was not okay, because when he died, I died with him. I don't even remember who I was before I met him. Parts of me have come back, but I forget. And I'm sure people sitting here listening may be able to relate to that, where a part of you feels like it went with them.
Absolutely.
It's very hard to describe to someone that hasn't lost anyone, because they think that, just because they're moving on, the funeral's over, they think that you are moving on. But in actuality, that's when you need them even more so, is after that whole process. And sometimes you don't want them around when they're trying to help you and give you grief books and everything else. Because I used to get frustrated thinking about, reading a grief book and getting over it. That's not how it worked for me. For me, it was connecting in with Nick and talking to him and opening up to that communication, where I started to realize, oh my gosh, he wants me to live. Like, I'm living for both of us right now. I'm hardly getting out of bed, but to get me out of bed is to know that, okay, he's going to be with me on this journey. So there were different things that I did to help me move through grief, because it's not about moving on. It's about moving through and just keep on moving.
You said something about being open to that communication, or that's huge. I talk to Jim every day. I write him every single day. We're not necessarily taught that how healing and necessary that is. But a lot of people say they don't receive signs. And I say, are you open to them? I don't believe they're not there, I guess is my perspective. But there are people who truly believe they're not getting these signs that we're fortunate enough to get.
Yes. Oh, I have goosebumps when you just said that. That's such a common thing that comes up for me. Like when people come to get readings too, they're saying, well, why am I not getting signs, but my mother's getting a sign? Or why am I not getting a sign, but this person's getting a sign? And I always say the same thing. We're constantly receiving signs, but some of us receive signs in different ways. And sometimes when we're going through grief or we're going through just the busyness of life, we're missing things. And sometimes it's really subtle. Like a lot of people wait for the visual signs. They think that they just give visual signs, but in actuality, they don't. So I can tell you guys some ways that you can receive the signs if you're feeling like, oh gosh, are they really around me? If you want me to get into that.
I think that's what a lot of people here need.
Yes. Okay. So this is the thing. When you receive a message, it could come through in a dream state, like you have a visitation where it's not necessarily a dream, but that's the easiest way to describe it. You're sleeping and their soul visits your soul, and it's so vivid that it feels like you woke up and you're like, I was just with them. That's a visitation from their soul. That's them hanging out with you. Now, there are fear dreams too. So I do want to touch on that to tell you if there's a fear dream where they're mad at you or you can't find them and they're living a separate life from you, or all these things that are just very negative, that's our own subconscious mind getting in the way. So that's not them visiting you and telling you that they're mad at you, because they will never be mad at you. They don't have that in them. When they transition into that heavenly realm, they're in a space of peace and love, wanting to bring that to you. So that's one thing. I'll tell you one example of how it happened for me, and then I'm going to tell you the other things that came up for me and some clients, and how you can receive it. So when Nick first passed, I can't tell you the time frame. It could be like a day after or that week, because you know how everything blends together when you're going through it. I had a visitation from him. So there was a moment where I actually saw him at the foot of my bed, and he was wearing the same hat that he always used to wear. It was a Hurley hat, a black Hurley hat. And I saw him and he was just staring at me, and I blinked and then he was gone. And then there was another visitation where I was sleeping, and I remember seeing him and I was talking to him, but it was telepathically. It was through our communication, through our thoughts. And I said, oh, and I was so excited to see him. He said, I just want to let you know, you're not going to see me for a while, but I'm still going to be around you. And like, it makes me want to cry now. I've told this story so many times, but I feel all this love in my heart right now that I need to share this with all of you, because that's what they want to say. They want you to know that even though you don't see them, they are still around you. And when he said that to me, I remember getting frustrated with him in this visitation, like wanting to ask him more questions. And he just stared at me. Now, with the visitations, they don't smile. I've noticed that with other clients telling me and my own loved ones, it's like a straight face. So it's not like a smile that they give you. So don't think that they're mad at you if they're not showing a facial expression when you have this, if it comes up for you. So that was the start of the signs from him. I felt his presence with me. I felt like he was standing by me when nobody was there. And then there were other moments where I would hear a song come on and I felt this overwhelming sense of presence. Like, that's not a song that he knows, but I know that he's telling me a message. Like, I'm honing in on these specific lyrics, and there's a reason that they're popping out like this. So when they come through to you, you may find that you can imagine what they say to you. So you might be taking the dog for a walk and you come across something on the ground and it's a heart, and you could hear your loved one in your mind saying, look at that. And they get all excited. It's not that you're imagining what they would say. You're actually tuning into their soul and what they're communicating to you right there. So it might be that they're nudging you to look at the the heart-shaped stone in front of you. Other times it might be you're picking up the phone to call someone and you want to share a moment with a friend that you got a job. And you can imagine your husband coming through and saying, I am so excited. You've worked so hard. And you hear that thought in your mind. It's not you imagining what he's saying. He's actually saying it to you telepathically like a thought, you know? So that's a big example because it's so subtle. It's just their communication has shifted.
And when you receive a sign, if you do, and you want to share it with people that are not of this belief system, what do we do in the world when we, oh my God, I had an amazing connection with Jim. You're crazy. I mean, that's
yeah.
right.
Yes. Oh yeah. People thought that I was definitely crazy. They didn't even have to say it. I could feel it. They're like, this girl's going through deep grief and, you know, she's not getting out of bed. And when she is getting out of bed, she's talking about all these signs. And I know that they thought that I was crazy. A lot of Nick's friends, some of them were open to it because they received signs, but I was like, literally, I spent more time with Nick when he passed than I did with the living that were here. I really built up that connection because I didn't want to be around anyone. So people thought that I was crazy. I would keep that sacred to yourself at certain points. Like you'll kind of know who to share it with. But if you are feeling that excitement in the moment and you want to share it, like I did, you do it and the right people will, you know, stick and the other people will kind of fall away or they won't get it, but they're not meant to fully understand it. But the other thing I would suggest is do it when you're ready. Because if you're in a vulnerable place where you're kind of second guessing the sign, if someone says, well, that sounds like a coincidence, doesn't it? You could easily go back on that feeling of that, you know, message from them and second guess it. And you don't want to do that. Like make sure you savor the moment first before you go and tell someone that you think might not be open to it. Now, one of the things that I was told was you're not letting him rest, because I kept on communicating with him and, you know, and I still do, still connect and communicate. And they said, like, let him rest in peace, you know? And I think a lot of that had to do with people feeling uncomfortable that I was keeping the stories going of him when he was here, also keeping the stories going, talking about the signs, and they didn't know how to handle it. Like people don't know how to handle when you're upset or when they want you to be happy, but then when you get happy about that sort of thing, some of them don't know how to handle it.
Or they think it's unhealthy.
Right.
Like I slip. I talk about Jim in the present tense because he's always with me. And that will confuse some people, but it's my reality.
Yes. I love that you mentioned the present tense because that's how I talk about my past loved ones. That's exactly how I talk about them, as like they're here, and because they're just, we can't see them the same way. But this is the big thing too. Like everyone listening, whoever's listening, whether this is a replay or live, just take a moment to take a breath in and like just close your eyes. And I want you to imagine, where are your loved ones standing, whether it's one person or more. Imagine, where are they standing with you right now? Now, you might feel like you're making it up, or you might just be sold on, I know that they're here. But just even move your hand in the direction that you feel them, or say out loud where you feel them. And you're just honoring that feeling. And once you start trusting and practicing with that and saying, okay, I know that you're standing to my right now. Okay, now I feel you putting your hand on top of my shoulder. It's like, or you feel their presence, putting their presence by your shoulder. You just say it out loud and you build up that communication. What's going to happen with that is more things are going to start to come about. And it's to the point where it almost becomes comical that there's so many signs that you're like, oh my gosh, this is really cool that this is happening. I can't believe the back-to-back signs. Because
everyone, so somebody just put, I haven't had any dreams yet. It's been 6 months. Do we all receive a dream, or she could later, or could it be in a different form?
Good question. So sometimes we don't remember our dreams. I believe our soul always leaves our body to travel. I always believe that our soul leaves our physical body when we're sleeping. Sometimes we don't remember what has happened in that situation. But the tip that I give my clients too with that is to look at a picture of them before you go to bed. I know sometimes it could be difficult to do that, but put them at the forefront of your mind. I'm sure they already are at the forefront of your mind, but in a way where you put the picture in front of you and just say, I really want to see you tonight. I'm open for you to come in to my dream, and just put it out there. Keep doing that before you go to bed and see what comes about. The other app that I've told some students to download is called the Dream On app. I don't know if it's still available because I had it on my phone before and then I deleted it to make more space. But last I checked, it was still available, but it's called Dream On. And I want to say it's a free app. And what it is just say your alarm gets set to wake you up at 7 a.m. Well, it will wake you up. I don't know if it's 15 minutes before and play a song, and then your alarm goes off. And what it does is it puts you in a space where you're half asleep, waking up, and you remember the dreams. And it really works. It worked for me. So it's a way that you could maybe wake yourself up before you're fully awake, to experience and remember those dreams. But no, not all the time you will have a dream right away or remember a dream right away. So what I would do is be aware of the presence of them. But I know during grief, sometimes you could block out feelings, like you can go through different moments where you feel really numb with the emotion and you don't feel them. But if you can open up to the possibility that they're going to come through different senses. They might come, it's called clairvoyantly, which is the vision. It's like a memory in your mind. So you're sitting in your seat right now, but think about what you were doing yesterday in your mind. In your mind's eye, this image of you in yesterday, you're seeing that clairvoyantly right now. You're going back to that space. So sometimes they'll show you an image. Maybe it's getting your oil changed. You see your car and you're like, why are they giving me that information? And someone has to, I don't know if someone in here has to change their oil and they haven't yet. Someone's bringing it up because it just came into me. But so it's going to be in your mind's eye. They'll get on you about that. Like, hey, I'm checking up on you. You're not doing this. Make sure you do it. So they put that in your mind's eye. The other way is clairaudience. It's that hearing, and you hear it like a thought. So if you guys say the word apple right now out loud, just say apple and then say apple in your mind. Okay. You know that thought that you have in your mind where you said apple? It's not actually a voice, but it's a thought that's clear, right? That's that telepathic communication. They can come in like that. They can tell you a message. Other times I've woken up in the middle of the morning or the middle of the night, and I've heard music, and there was no music playing, but I literally heard I could hardly get out of bed at this point, and this Bob Marley song, Everything's Going to Be All Right, was playing, and it sounded close up yet far away. And I felt this peace come over me, like I was just given this healing, and just know that, okay, I'm going to get out of bed today. I'm going to be okay to get out of bed. I'm going to take one day at a time. And the other times it might be goosebumps that you get from your loved ones. Other times I remember it feels like a pulse on your arm. If you could imagine someone tapping you, it feels almost like a pulse, like a muscle spasm, really. That's happened too, where they'll come through. So I don't know if anyone's experienced that feeling. I'm trying to think of some other ways.
Somebody just looked at their oil.
Oh, did they?
And it's at 16%.
Oh, that is the funniest thing. Okay, so it makes sense for them. That's so funny. That is so funny.
Like, we are taught to dismiss these things, and we are taught that that's crazy. But maybe you personally, Jennifer, did have an image of something about oil before, and we are really taught to ignore it and listen to logic.
Yeah.
And this is a reminder that we can listen to our body. Your body is telling you.
Yes. Yes. And sometimes it's if I'm putting in quotes random, because it's always the random thoughts that are the messages. Like I believe in I always say there's no coincidences. There's always messages from heaven. So we are always getting information from them in different ways. Sometimes it's louder than others. Like sometimes it could be 11:11 on the clock and people will say, well, why am I seeing the number? I don't get. What are they trying to tell me? Is something wrong? And I always say, no, it's just to let you know that they're around you. They're just nudging you to notice something that will pop out at you. I was interviewed on a podcast the other day and I was telling the story and it sounds so out there, but I'm going to share it here too, because this is ways that they can manipulate things. They will find ways to do that for us. So my husband Tony, he was actually childhood friends with Nick that passed away. I don't know if you know that story, Sam, if you looked at my story video on my website, but they were childhood friends. I had never met Tony until 4 years after Nick passed. They were both from out of state, but Nick and I went to college together. So luckily Tony is open to this sort of thing. We communicate with Nick all the time. So we talk about all of the past loved ones and everything, but it was the anniversary or birthday of Nick. And I was on the phone with his guardian, like a second mom to him. And I remember talking to him, and the night before we had cooked bacon and we should have cleaned it up that night, but we didn't. And you know how bacon grease could come into the pan and it had tin foil. Well, it was sitting there from the night before. And when I was walking down the steps on the phone with Nick's guardian, I almost died. I was like, oh, and she's like, what's wrong? And I said, oh my gosh. I'm walking down the stairs and in the bacon grease is Nick's outline of his face from his like senior picture from high school. And it was the perfect outline of him. I don't know how to describe this. And it's interesting that it can happen like that. His face has shown up in water. When I was going through the rough time of him passing away that year, I took a walk and I walked outside and I was just looking out at this water in my neighborhood, and his face showed up in the water. So things can be manipulated by the spirit realm. So just keep your options open. If you see something that's very different and you also have a feeling beside that visual, just know that there's messages in that. Even in license plates, you'll get nudged to look at the license plate at the perfect time too.
Yeah, and I will have people who do receive messages suddenly say, all of the sudden I'm not. Like, what did I do wrong? We were connecting and now we're not. And I'm curious for your answer. I always say we need to slow down. Are you too busy to see them?
Yeah.
But what else can people do when they're thinking they're at fault?
Okay. Yes. I'm glad you brought that up. This is a very common theme where they think at the beginning it's very strong and then all of a sudden they don't feel them anymore. They're not getting the same type of signs. The way that I can compare it to is sometimes, when you get used to a dog at your feet, you kind of forget that they're there if they're always there. If you have a pet, you might know that it doesn't feel different. When you first get the pet, you definitely know when they're around. But when they live in your house for a couple years, you just kind of forget that they're there, This is sort of like it when our past loved ones come through. Their presence is very bold when they first pass. It feels very different. But at times, some people might recognize it. But then you get used to that energy. They're around you so much that you get so used to it that you don't feel the difference. On the other side of things, if you're missing the visual signs or the things that you received before, it could be because you're busy, like you're distracted with different things, and that's okay too. The biggest thing is to know that they're available. Like it's almost like a calling card. Like the moment you say their name or you think of them, they're there. Like they are right there. Like they are not going anywhere. It doesn't matter if they're 40 years out, they're still going to be around you. When you get to that heavenly realm with whoever is listening right now, it doesn't matter if it's 100 years from now, they're going to be waiting for you because time doesn't exist there. I just gave a reading to a son that lost his mother, and he was concerned about her being there when he got there. And one of the things that we talked about was um, 20 years here, over there, it's like a split second because time doesn't exist. So that's the important piece too, to know that.
How important is just being open? Because I think for me,
Yeah.
I really told myself I was just losing it. I'm nuts. You're making it up. You're just trying to make yourself feel better. And that was my biggest hurdle was, you know what? I'm not, I know me. I know this is a sign, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. I had moments of getting these signs, and it was like an overwhelming feeling of like, this is it no matter what. And then I had a moment of, okay, maybe I'm going crazy. And then I kept asking for more signs. So I'd say, if you're really around me, send me a medium that confirms this, which there was a medium that came through a skeptical friend um, of mine. Like they were out to eat, and a medium, not, he wasn't doing it for a living at that point, but he started to open up and connect in with Nick. He came through to the skeptical friend of mine. So it's confirmed. Sometimes you might not have that situation happen, and you have to trust the feeling the first time. But I would say to, I don't know if you can still hear me. Let's see. I don't know if my thing cut out for a second.
No, I can hear you.
Okay, good. It went black for me on my screen. But one of the things that I would say is keep a special notebook or a journal, write down the sign that you're getting and put the date next to it. Now, sometimes I notice my signs come in 3. I don't know if it's just me or other people too, but I'll notice, like the other day I was in the car and I saw a license plate message. I heard a song that came on, and then I saw a motorcycle whiz by within 3 seconds of each other. It was almost simultaneously. And I was in the car with my husband, and we're like, okay, Nick's around, you know? So those types of things will happen. But I would say, no matter what, know that we're only using part of our brain here on Earth. And really, we have to normalize this. Oh, that's funny. So is it animal? Hey, animals are communicators too with them too. Animals are, but so we can open up to the possibility of having that communication with them. Just know that it is available.
And I say this all the time. Anybody who hasn't read the book Signs, it's a great one. I'm sure you have, but we can ask for signs. We can ask for specific signs. So I'll be talking to someone and they'll say, you know, I really hope I meet a plumber. I'm having so much, you know, I'm calling so many plumbing issues at my house. And I'll say, well, let's be more specific. You know, a plumber in this county.
Yes.
And you might not get exactly what you asked for, but you certainly increase the chances of the sign.
Yes, it's all about the awareness of it, because the sign, the things are happening around us all the time. It's just becoming aware. And when your intention is clear on this, like receiving it, you're going to be open to it. And it's funny that you brought up the book, The Signs, because I've seen the cover. I've never read it, but I had a client come in person for a reading on yesterday, and she brought that book in. It was in Spanish, but she showed me and she said, before my son died, he was going to be reading this book. And she said, now I'm reading the book. And it was just an interesting experience. So I think it's funny you brought up that book, but we can always receive these signs. I think it's important not to compare your experiences with your signs and your experience with grief to other people, because you can start hearing other people's stories and think, well, I didn't have that happen. That means that they aren't around me, or what if they're upset with me? And it's not true at all. They're here. Now, the big thing is, just like anything else, any other skill, you have to put in the time and energy to learn the tips and techniques on how to do it and set aside time to do it. So you could integrate this in your life. Like if you're in the car, maybe that's your time to communicate with your past loved one and make the effort to communicate. Maybe it's setting aside morning time to journal or write a letter, like you were talking about, Samantha, because that's exactly what I was doing. I was using automatic writing. I'd write Nick a letter, And then I'd wait for his response and let him write through me after and do channeled writing. So, and there are parts of me where like, is this me? But it couldn't have been, because it came out so quick, and it wasn't the same way that I would write. And my writing looked different when I was doing it. And that's what automatic writing is. But it really was a process. And, I did have a lot of alone time during that process, and that helped me build up that communication. I'm not saying to be alone all the time, because I know that they don't want us to be alone 24/7. And the other thing that came up for me was, because I was teaching my third graders were actually giving me stories that they didn't know that were connecting in with Nick. So one of my third graders, I remember, I don't want to mention his name because we never know how everything's connected on the internet, but he was one of my favorite kids. We'll call him Johnny. And he had a lot of energy, always out of his seat and everything else, but I just loved him. And I remember one day he was supposed to be doing an assignment, and he wasn't doing the assignment, but he came up to my desk and he said, "Miss Marino, I wrote you a story and drew you a picture." And I'm thinking, okay, he's not supposed to be doing this right now, but let me see what it is. And it was a story about Miss Marino and Nicholas going to Hawaii and eating banana pancakes. And we were supposed to go to Hawaii together, and he used to make me banana pancakes. So it was a sign from Nick coming through to him, using the children to do different things. And I know that the kids are very easily influenced. So if you go into a store and all of a sudden you have a little kid wave at you and you're like having a rough day, just know that they are little heaven sent angels, and they're easily influenced to do things at the right time.
So glad you brought this up. It might be a little bit off what you're talking about, but what about parents who don't discuss people we've lost because they think they're protecting their kids? So my nieces just lost an uncle on their mom's side.
Okay.
And I was instructed not to talk about it because it makes them sad.
Oh,
so you can imagine me, the psychologist, I'm having a field day with this, but this is another perspective to give.
Yes. Okay. So my belief process, I just spoke with someone about this. I don't remember how the client was connected and who it was, but hold on one second. Let me just think. There's so many different readings, and I just had this happen. Yeah, it was actually the same woman that came about her son. She had lost her cousin, her female cousin, and she had kids. And she's like, "Is there any message that she gives me for her kids?" And I was told by the past loved one, her cousin, that it's important that they continue telling stories about her, because that's what she loves and that's what's going to help the children. So it's actually, if we normalize the communication, it's not going to be buried down. They're going to feel sad no matter what. But right. If you actually bring it up, you're lessening that residual buildup of emotional stuff that's going to come up later in their adult life anyways, most likely. So it's better to have the conversations. And if someone does get emotional, because sometimes it's the parents that don't want it brought up because they can't handle the emotions, then it's okay for them to show emotion in front of the child, because it's letting them know it's okay to release the emotions. And it's a process. It's not going to be perfect. It might be, one day you might be smiling and the next day you might be sad. So I always suggest with the children to have the conversations, even if they have to get them to draw things out that they're feeling or write things out, still have them have like a picture that they can look at before they go to bed and talk to the picture, let them know that they're listening. That's the type of thing that I would do. And children have power. They are messengers where they might say, I've heard some clients say that, my daughter never met my father, but she brought up details about my father that nobody knew and gave me a message from my dad. So I feel like it's important to let them speak about it and to get sad, because if that's coming up, it's a natural thing. It's a good thing.
I love that. Thank you so much. Because I think there are kids who are receiving signs and don't know what to do with it. And if we can't even talk about that person, how
Yes.
do we help them understand that they can have the conversation about whatever just happened?
It's true. And every year, other than like the past 2 years, because they stopped the camp, Tony, my husband, and I, we do a grief camp called Camp Circle of Love. Now we're in Tampa, Florida. I know other places have grief camps, but it's just a weekend. And the children are there and they honor their grief and they make memory boxes. They do a drum circle and they write little letters and throw it in the fire. There's a puppet show about grief. There's so many different outlets for them, arts and crafts around that grief, with their family, and they go around in a circle and share a memory, like maybe something that made them sad and something that made them happy. Because a lot of the kids might feel guilty being happy, thinking of a memory because they're not here. But I think that as adults, we have the same type of things that children, same ways we think as children. So it's important to honor both adults and children during the grief process, I believe.
Thank you so much. And that's what we get in here most often. We get comments about people, hearing an echo, struggling with my loved ones no longer talk about the person I've lost. It's like they never existed. And how do I have that conversation? And
yes. And you know what I always get from the past loved ones too? They get excited when they cook recipes in, like, so it's almost like, okay, let's do her justice. Like, my grandma passed away and she made special cookies. So let's make the cookies together that she loved to make and honor her. And she's with us, standing with us. If you forget a certain piece of the recipe, she will maybe pop it in your mind. So there's so many different ways with this process, there's a lot with the process of that. So just including them in the holidays too. Sometimes people, not just for weddings, but other holidays, they might put a place setting down for them that first holiday that they're not there. It depends on what you would like to do. But there are ways to honor them.
I love, and somebody just commented animals as well. I
Yes.
only had one dog at the time, but when I first lost Jim, we still do, but I would sit and hold some of his ashes and talk with my dog. And she will go up and nudge them like, we haven't done this yet tonight. It's time. Now I have two dogs and we all sit there together. So I completely believe that there are times the animals can see and tell us things as well.
They can. And you know what else is interesting with the animals that I've noticed is sometimes our past loved ones come through the animal's body. They literally will come through the animal's body so that they can touch it. Like, you can hold them, but it's really them coming through. They can give you love through the animal. Sometimes they might look at you and you're like, I feel like I'm looking in the eyes of, blah, blah, blah. And it's not a coincidence, because I'm not saying that they live there all the time, but I'm saying they can pop in and look through the eyes of the animal or the baby so that you can look through their eyes and receive that love, if that makes sense.
So much sense. I got Dallas to help me and Sassy heal, but I've had dogs. I had a dog before I had Sassy, and I have said only people in this community will get it. Jim, I've never had an animal like Dallas. Like, Jim sent me Dallas somehow. It's so even just saying I'm getting another dog, help me pick out, just including them in the conversations and in the process. For me, maybe I'm just making myself feel comfortable, but that's where I feel like I get even more signs.
That's exactly what happens. And they want to be a part of our life because they're going to be a part of it, whether we know it or not. They will put people into our life to call us at the right time. They will pull strings to make things easier for us in a lot of ways. Now, one thing that I'm getting a message to share about right now too, before I forget, is the power behind birthdays and anniversaries. So if it is their birthday or their anniversary, or if it's someone else's, they're more apt to show up to you more so, because your mind, that awareness is there, so that they're going to make sure that they find a way to get through to you anyways, because your awareness is there. You're locked into a certain date. So I found that sometimes during their birthdays, people recognize more signs they'll send you signs throughout the year, but that's the time that you're locked into it. So just kind of be aware of that too. I think that's important.
I love that. Anything you want to share that I'm not asking? I definitely want you to have a place to put your information because many people will probably want readings.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. The big thing is so there's so many tools to use. One of the things I'm going to hold up this deck of cards, and I don't know if I can, if you're open, if I pull a card for whoever's supposed to get a message. If you think of a loved one, just a general message, not to each person, but just like a general message. Are you open to that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I was guided to create this deck, and it's like a 55 card deck of healing messages from past loved ones. So there's no way you can pick the wrong card. But what I want you guys to do, if you're sitting here, just open up I just want to make sure I take out the directions so it doesn't, I don't pull that. Open up your mind to the person that you want to come forward with a message right now. And whoever's on here, you will take this message in the way that you're meant to take it. There's one message that could be pulled from here, but the message to you might mean something to you rather than someone else, if that makes sense. You'll just get a feeling when you hear the message. So I just want to pull one of these and see what comes up. So just imagine the person with you and imagine them giving you that sense of knowing what this message means for you. So let me just take it. Okay. It's time to travel. So this message to one person could mean getting on a plane. This message to someone else could be like literally time travel through meditation. This could mean so many different things. I don't want to give you too many answers because you'll know yourself. It might even be something that is coming up where you guys were supposed to take a trip together and you put off that specific trip. So that's the message that came up for others that are in here. So take it as you will with that message. But I also want you to think that you don't need oracle decks to get a message. You can use the things around you, like I mentioned, license plates, signs, music. So I just want to say this last piece before I forget. Like a lot of information's coming to me right now, like I'm supposed to share it. It's interesting, like I can't get it out fast enough, so I'm just trusting. And I know that the spirit realm is here with us and guiding this conversation. But one of the things that happens is if there is a song that comes on the radio, I know some songs are very difficult to hear where it feels like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could handle this right now. And other times you might feel like this feeling of this blessing that you could listen to it and you're meant to hear it. But sometimes there are songs that have come out after they passed away, but you're being guided to be like almost like your ears are magnified out to a certain area and there's a message, song lyrics that are meant for you. Trust those the first time that they come. You might walk into a store and you're like, wow, I needed to hear that song. Or it could be even song lyrics that come up on the computer and you see the quotes coming through and you're honing in on one section. So definitely pay attention to that. And don't feel guilty being happy in your life. Like don't feel guilty to live it up, because what I ended up doing after Nick passed was I made a list of things that I wanted to do before reaching heaven. And I thought, well, my life can't get any worse than it already is. Like if I'm going to be stuck here, this is how I was thinking. If I'm going to be stuck here, I might as well live it up for both of us. And like, I have nothing to fear. Like I've lost everything that I thought my life was going to be. So let me just do this. And I just wrote down everything I wanted to do. Like I went skydiving. I did a cross country trip that we were supposed to do together. And I just started to honor what my soul needed. And you know what happens with people that are going through grief? You can't really give to many other people when you're going through that grief. You have no energy to give. And it really taught me how to focus in on really honoring myself, because I was always someone that would honor other people and put myself second. So I thought, well, I can't give much to anyone else right now. I have to give to myself. And it actually helped me to really be clear on what do I want in my life, and what is going to be important to me to live in this life and have the energy that I need to make sure I'm recharged and I'm okay, to get through moment by moment instead of thinking too far ahead.
I know so many people who are watching are getting so much from this.
Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. I'm now seeing the comments. I clicked the button so I could now see the clients.
I'm glad you mentioned new songs also, because
Yeah.
there are some new songs that have come out that I've read the lyrics and I'm like, this was written for me.
Yes. Yes. Gives you goosebumps, doesn't it? Once you see it, you just know.
I will put it in the group so people can have a visual, but how can people connect with you?
Yes. So they can connect to me on Facebook at Lindsay Marino, or on Instagram, Lindsay Marino Medium. I'm on TikTok. I just joined. There's so many platforms. But my website, that's the fastest way. Like if they want to, there's a link on there, lindsaymarino.com. And they could even click on a link that says 7 ways that you can communicate with your past loved ones. There's some stuff on there with resources that they might enjoy too.
I will put that in here for everyone. Thank you so much for making time.
I'm so thankful that you had me in here, Samantha. It was great talking with you and being with all of you today.
Thank you. And if you're watching a replay and you put comments in, I will be sure Lindsay's in the group. She'll get them. So if you're not watching live and we forgot something, just chime in and let us know.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.